It happened in less than 3 seconds, but those 3 seconds shattered 15 years of unchecked power. The halls of the Lincoln County Courthouse were unusually still that morning. Fluorescent lights flickered quietly above the marble floors, and the rhythmic shuffle of dress shoes echoed off the walls like a metronome of routine justice. Clerks murmured, defendants waited, and lawyers rehearsed arguments under their breath. Then, Brent Calloway walked in. At 6'3", with broad shoulders and a stare that cut through glass, Sergeant Calloway didn't need to announce himself. The scent of cologne and cold steel preceded him. He wasn't just another officer, he was Lincoln County law enforcement. Decorated, feared, and untouchable. The kind of man people described with both admiration and dread. He was there to testify in a narcotics case. At least, that's what the docket said. But his eyes weren't on the bench. They locked onto something across the room. A black woman, standing near the judge's chambers, wearing a deep navy suit and heels sharp enough to puncture ego. Her natural curls framed a calm, unreadable face. She was speaking quietly with a public defender, her posture composed, her presence undeniable. But to Calloway, she was out of place. He didn't know her name. He didn't care. "You can't be here," he barked, marching toward her like she'd committed a felony just by existing in his field of vision. The room quieted. A stenographer paused mid-keystroke. The buzz of fluorescent lights became deafening. She turned slowly, not startled, not defensive. Just calm. Too calm. That's what broke him. With a grunt of contempt, Calloway raised his hand, and the slap came fast, loud, and vicious. Crack! Her glasses flew off her face, clattering to the ground. A bailiff dropped a file. A young intern gasped audibly. Time stopped. But the woman didn't flinch. She reached down, picked up her glasses with grace, and placed them back on the bridge of her nose. Then she looked him in the eye, calm, dignified, resolute. "I am Dr. Nia Grant," she said, her voice cool but thunderous. "The new federal judge has been assigned to this courthouse." Calloway's face drained of color. His jaw slackened. Someone's phone began recording. Someone else was already texting the video. By 3:17 p.m., the footage had been uploaded to 5 social platforms. By 6 p.m., it had over 700,000 views. By nightfall, Sergeant Calloway wasn't just feared, he was finished. And Judge Nia Grant? She hadn't even raised her voice. The morning slap was not just an assault. It was an unmasking. For 15 years, Sergeant Brent Calloway had walked the streets of Lincoln County as if he owned the pavement. His boots were polished to a mirror sheen, his medals aligned with military precision, and his photo was framed in the department's Wall of Honor 3 times. On paper, he was a model officer, the highest number of arrests in the county, multiple commendations for bravery, and 2 letters of recognition from the mayor's office. But those numbers didn't tell the truth. They never did. Behind the clean-cut uniform and the steel-blue eyes was a man who had mastered the art of weaponized respectability. He knew when to smile for the cameras. He knew which kids to high-five during community events. He knew how to string just enough legalese into a report to make any complaint disappear. And most importantly, he knew exactly who to target, and who would never be believed. Black teens with hoodies? Latino men driving used sedans. Asian women who asked too many questions. He had been reported 42 times for misconduct, ranging from unnecessary force to intimidation, illegal searches, and falsified reports. But every complaint was met with the same line from his supervisors. "Calloway's got a clean record. You sure you're not overreacting?" The truth is, Brent Calloway didn't wear a badge. He wore a mask. and it took a slap to the wrong woman to rip it off. Dr. Nia Grant had only been in town for 72 hours. She wasn't a local. She wasn't one of the good old boys. She was something else entirely. The first black female federal judge ever assigned to the Lincoln District Court. Her resume was frightening. Top of her class at Howard, a fiery civil rights attorney who'd dismantled more than one small-town court with nothing but depositions and steel resolve. But what made her dangerous wasn't her intelligence, it was her poise. She knew how to sit in silence and let power undo itself. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. People used words like sharp, composed, and intimidating. But the truth was closer to this. She was volcanic beneath the surface, patient, calculated, and lethal when crossed. She hadn't planned to expose Brent Calloway in her first week. But fate, and his arrogance, chose otherwise. Carmen Vasquez was the county's assistant prosecutor. Latinx, 32, first-generation college graduate. She knew all about code switching and the quiet grind of trying to prove yourself in a system built to exclude you. She also knew about Brent Calloway intimately. He once cornered her in the evidence room under the pretext of missing files, only to press too close and whisper things she never wrote down. She reported it once. Nothing happened. So she learned to survive. She kept her head down. She played by the rules. Until the day she saw that slap. That day she didn't hesitate. She lifted her phone and pressed record. And then there was Officer May Tanaka, quiet, disciplined. By the book. But beneath her crisp patrol uniform was a scar, one she tried to hide with long sleeves and silence. 8 months ago, she'd questioned Calloway about a suspicious traffic stop report. She'd been young, idealistic, and under the impression that the truth still mattered in Lincoln County. He didn't yell. He simply waited until the locker room was empty, pushed her against the wall, and twisted her wrist until she nearly blacked out. Then he whispered, "File a report. See who believes the new Asian rookie over me." She didn't. But the scar never faded. And on the day of the slap, she stood at the far end of the courthouse watching. Her hand instinctively touched her wrist, and for the first time, she didn't look away. 4 lives, 4 perspectives, 1 mask removed. What Brent Calloway never understood was this: power can silence individuals, but it cannot hold back the tide forever. The woman he once dismissed, the outsider, the survivor, the rookie, the judge, they were watching. They were recording. They were remembering. And now, they were done waiting. The slap hadn't even stopped echoing through the courthouse when the first line of defense kicked in. Inside the Lincoln County Police Department, a polished statement was already being drafted. A misunderstanding, it read. An unfortunate escalation, a regrettable occupational accident. It was as if they had a template for this. Because they did. By noon, the department's public information officer stood behind a podium, flanked by 2 expressionless lieutenants. The fluorescent lights made his forehead glisten as cameras rolled, and microphones leaned forward like silent accusers. Sergeant Calloway has been temporarily placed on administrative leave pending a full internal review. We urge the public not to rush to judgment until all facts are established. The language was clinical, cautious, manipulated. Not a single word about the judge, not a single mention of her name. Not a single apology. The slap had been loud, but the silence afterward, deafening. Back inside the department, tension was beginning to boil beneath the surface. Officer May Tanaka sat in the break room, untouched coffee cooling in her hands. The TV above her played the statement again in a loop. She watched it once. twice. By the third time, her hands were shaking. Across the room, a group of senior officers chuckled behind closed doors. She should have said who she was. Looked like just another loudmouth to me. Brent just had a rough morning. People overreact. Tanaka stared at her wrist. The scar felt warmer that day. She didn't speak, but inside something had shifted. Quietly, irrevocably. She had always known the system protected him. What she hadn't realized until now was how quickly it would betray the truth to do so. Meanwhile, in the public square outside City Hall, outrage wasn't building. It was erupting. By mid-afternoon, a crowd had gathered. Small at first, a few activists with hand-painted signs, local law students filming TikToks, church elders in folding chairs. But by sunset, it had become a wall of bodies. Maceless justice for Judge Grant. Protect black women. Is this what accountability looks like? Carmen Vasquez arrived late, hidden behind sunglasses and hooded up. She didn't stand at the front. She didn't speak. But when a college student asked her if she thought the department would fire Calloway, she didn't lie. No, she said. They'll try to contain it. Minimize it. Pretend it's a PR issue. That's what they always do. So what do we do? The girl asked. Carmen exhaled. We make it impossible to ignore. By that evening, Justice for Judge Grant had hit trending status nationwide. Clips of the slap, slowed down, zoomed in, color-corrected, were circulating across Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, even Reddit. The narrative was slipping from their hands, and inside the police chief's office, damage control became doctrine. Chief Edward Mills, a man who hadn't patrolled a street in 20 years, slammed the blinds shut and picked up his personal phone. We need to contain this, he growled. Spin it, reassign it. Do something. His deputy, less polished, more cynical, muttered what everyone in the room was already thinking. If she weren't a judge, this would have been buried already. But she was a judge. And the whole damn country was watching. Still, the system doesn't panic. It adjusts. It cloaks itself in procedure, reviews, and bureaucratic jargon. It hopes that if it moves slowly enough, the public will get distracted. That the outrage will pass. That the truth will erode beneath a pile of paperwork. But what it forgot, what it always forgets, is that some people don't get distracted. Like Officer May Tanaka, who was now collecting old incident reports that no one thought she kept. Like Carmen Vasquez, who was backing up her video onto 5 hard drives. And like Judge Nia Grant, whose silence wasn't surrender, but strategy. In the shadows of this institutional spin, a different kind of resistance was waking up. The slap was not just a breach of decorum, it was a signal. A spark, a line in the sand. And for the first time in a long time, the system, the real one, I was about to face people who weren't afraid anymore. They met in places no one noticed. A church basement after choir practice. The back corner of the public library is near the broken printer. Once, even inside May Tanaka's old Honda Civic, parked beneath a flickering streetlight near the river. There were no speeches, no declarations. Just quiet urgency, exchanged in glances and flash drives, because they knew. They knew Brent Calloway wouldn't go down from outrage alone. He had weathered noise before, protests, angry op-eds, even internal complaints. Every time he emerged untouched with a new award or promotion. This wasn't just about one slap. It never had been. This was about the entire machine that kept him untouchable. And Carmen Vasquez and Officer May Tanaka were done playing by their rules. The first file came from Carmen. It was a blurry PDF, An anonymous complaint from 2 years ago by a young black man arrested for resisting. Carmen remembered the case because something hadn't added up. No body cam footage. No independent witness. Just Calloway's word and bruises no one could explain. She had saved the file back then, not out of strategy, but out of instinct. Now it was evidence. "Here," she whispered, sliding it across the table in the library. "That's one." May nodded. "I've got more." May's collection was different. It wasn't paperwork, it was a fear. She had started screenshotting internal dispatch notes months ago, times when Calloway's name showed up next to escalated use of force, but somehow never triggered a formal review. She also had handwritten notes, addresses, badge numbers, vague memories from rookie officers who weren't sure but something felt off. Her most precious item? A photo of her own wrist taken the day after Calloway nearly broke it in the locker room. "He said no one would believe me," she told Carmen. "He was right then, but not now." As their files grew, so did their fear. They encrypted everything, multiple cloud backups. 3 separate flash drives are stored in different locations. One was hidden inside a tampon box in Carmen's desk drawer. Another was inside the battery compartment of a dead flashlight, which May kept in her patrol car. Because this wasn't just about proving what Calloway did. It was about protecting what they found from the people who'd burn it all to keep the illusion alive. Finally, they went to her. Late one evening, after the courthouse had emptied and the streetlights outside hummed low, they knocked on the heavy wooden door of Judge Nia Grant's chambers. She opened it herself. No words, just a nod. Inside she made tea, black, unsweetened, no fuss. She sat. She waited. Carmen went first, May followed. As the evidence came out, digitally, verbally, painfully, Judge Grant didn't flinch. She didn't interrupt. She didn't even blink when May showed her the photo of her bruised wrist. When Carmen finished explaining how she'd compiled complaints ignored by Internal Affairs, Judge Grant leaned forward and said the only words they needed to hear. "We do this quietly. And we do it thoroughly. If we're going to bring down a man like him, we bring down the system that built him." From that day on, the operation had a rhythm. Carmen created a master list of victims, first names only, organized by year, race, and location. May provided map data, hot spots where complaints repeated, and areas where patrol footage consistently disappeared. Judge Grant gave them access to archived internal reviews, some of which had been conveniently lost over the years. Patterns began to form. Same neighborhoods, same time of day, same justification, non-compliance. But there was something more chilling. Same supervisors signing off. Same silence at the top. They weren't chasing a rogue cop. They were exposing a protection racket wearing badges. And they weren't alone anymore. A young IT tech at the county server, quiet, shy, scared, handed Carmen a folder of metadata one morning. A retired black officer left May an unsigned envelope at her locker, filled with old case numbers and hand-scrawled notes. Even a city councilwoman began asking questions in closed-door meetings. No one shouted, no one marched. But piece by piece, a coalition was forming, not in the streets, not in the news. In the shadows. Because they all understood the stakes. If they failed, Calloway wouldn't just survive, he'd become stronger. But if they succeeded, they wouldn't just bring him down, they'd pull the curtain back on an empire built on fear. 5 days. That's how long it took for the slap to grow from a courthouse incident to a federal case. On the morning of the trial, the line outside the Lincoln County Courthouse wrapped around the block. Protesters, reporters, survivors, students, and skeptics, all pressed shoulder to shoulder, waiting to witness history. Some held signs, others held their silence. All held their breath. Inside, the courtroom pulsed with tension so thick it seemed to bend the air. The judge's bench gleamed under overhead lights. The prosecution table bristled with files. Federal marshals lined the walls, and in the center of it all, shackled at the wrists and ankles, sat the man who once walked those very halls like a king, Sergeant Calloway. His eyes darted between faces, searching for allies, finding none. At 9:03 a.m., Judge Nia Grant entered, and this time, everyone stood. But it wasn't out of formality, it was reverence, because everyone in that room knew she had turned the tables. And today, the house of cards would fall. The indictment was brutal in its precision. 47 counts of criminal misconduct. Assault on a federal judge. Tampering with evidence. Witness intimidation. Systematic abuse of authority over a 15-year span. When the lead federal prosecutor finished reading the charges, the silence was funereal. But Judge Grant wasn't finished. "This is not just about one man," she said, her voice cutting through the room like a scalpel. "This is about a system that chose to look the other way. Today we confront both." Then she nodded, and the doors opened.